Hey everyone, this is Friedel Hakoreja Raven, and I'm here with my recap and review of Lovecraft Country, season number 1, episode number 2, which is titled Whitey's on the Moon. And this episode, you all, it felt like a season finale. I'm not really sure what Misha Green and her team has planned for this season, but everything happened so fast. Like, even though I can agree with some people that there were some pacing issues, but this episode still delivered with content. However, I do think that the writing team needs to spend more time fleshing out certain characters. But yeah, again, it happened so fast. So yeah, I'm like, we still have 8 more episodes left, so anything can happen. Coming to this episode, it opened with Uncle George and Letty having a whole lot of fun. So they're in the mansion, and we already know that this mansion isn't what it seems. Uncle George's room is full of books that he wanted to read, so he's having fun with that. Letty's room is filled with a whole lot of amazing clothes, so she's having fun trying different clothes on, and they all fit like a glove. And again, yeah, there's just something wrong in this house. Of course, Atticus knows what they went through last night, so he is very suspicious about what's happening. He just wants to get out of here. The three of them hear this ringing and they're like, is this an alarm? But then again, it's not an alarm. It's basically a call to lunch, and William comes in, and William is like, I have been told to take care of you. So, will you please accompany me so that I can serve you lunch? And of course, Atticus isn't buying, and Atticus is like, where's my dad? I need to talk to my dad. And William tells Atticus that his father isn't here. He went to go meet a lawyer, but he'll be back soon. As William is taking them through this mansion, they come across this huge picture, and it's of Titus Braithwaite, who was the original owner of this mansion. It turns out that this isn't the actual original mansion. It burnt down due to a fire, and this is actually a replica, and there are no phones or anything, so they can't communicate with the outside world. And this is also where we get to know that Titus Braithwaite had slaves, even though he was very kind to them and all of that weird stuff. So they're all sitting down for lunch. However, Atticus isn't into it. Atticus actually asks George and Letty how they're all very calm. And yeah, it turns out that George and Letty don't necessarily remember what happened to them last night. Only Atticus does, and Atticus isn't happy about it. Atticus is like, we were attacked by these monsters. We were attacked by the sheriff. I had to shoot the sheriff, and Letty is like, you shot the sheriff? Yeah, they don't remember anything. However, Atticus is like, you know what, we'll handle that later. However, we need to go to the village because I think that my father might be down there. And he also talks about how the car crashed because in the previous episode, Letty crashed the car. But then again, they find the car in kind of a good condition in the garage, and they're like, Atticus, you told us that the car was totaled. And yeah, even Atticus doesn't know what's happening. And then William comes in. William hands Uncle George the keys to the car, and Atticus tells William that they want to go to the village. And William is like, yeah, you can go, but just come back home before sunset. So the village is very creepy, in my opinion. It reminded me of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, the movie. And Atticus is trying to look for his father, while Letty and Uncle George are trying to figure out why they don't remember what happened last night. And Letty suggests that maybe Atticus is suffering from shell shock after he came back from the army. And Atticus is like, no, it's not shell shock. I know what we went through. I know what we saw. And this is where they all hear the same whistling they heard last night. Atticus remembers the whistle sound. He follows the whistle sound, and he comes across this tall stone tower, and there's a woman outside with these two dogs. And this woman, I actually remember her from HBO's show The Deuce. It's a very fun show, even though it stars James Franco. It was a very, very fun show. If you guys haven't watched it, it only lasted for 3 seasons, and it talked about the success and basically also the downfall of the porn industry. It's an amazing show. It also stars Maggie Gyllenhaal, and yeah, go watch it. It's on HBO. So this woman is basically I guess the owner of the stone tower, and she basically ends up being very racist towards Atticus and Uncle George and Letty. And Uncle George is like, "Is this stone tower some kind of prison?" And the woman is like, "No, it's not a prison. We basically hunt animals and then we put the bodies of the animals inside. But yeah, you guys need to go back to the house." And it's already sunset, it's nighttime, and I'm like, why would you spend so much time in the village that the sun sets, even when you know that monsters come out at night? So as they're walking, Uncle George stops and he's like, I'm it's like as if I'm remembering something. And Atticus asks what it is about. This is where we find out that Atticus's mother's great ancestor was actually a slave for Titus Braithwaite, and she ran away after the mansion caught on fire. So there's a link there. However, before they can get back to the mansion, they are again attacked by the Shoggoths. The entire scene was quite dark for my liking. I really hope that there was a bit more light. But then again, having scenes being shot in darkness does end up helping with CGI and costs. So before they're attacked, Claire Braithwaite comes and she whistles again, and it's the same whistle we have heard before. And yeah, apparently Uncle George and Letty don't remember anything at all, and they realize that their clothes are dirty, but they can't remember what happened. And this is where Claire's like, "Uncle George and Letty can go back to their rooms. However, Atticus, I need to take you to meet my father." And Atticus goes to this weird, strange lab where Samuel Braithwaite is on the surgery table and he's actually having his liver extracted without being under anesthesia. And I'm like, yeah, this person is crazy. So while that's happening, Uncle George is trying to remember what happened, and he notices the book, The House of on the Borderlands and Other Novels, and he takes the book out, and it opens a passageway. He goes through the secret passageway, and he comes across this huge library, and this is where he finds the book by bylaws and precepts, yeah, bylaws and precepts of the Order of the Ancient Dawn, which is basically all of the rules and regulations that the Order of the Ancient Dawn have to follow. And he starts reading that. While that's happening, Samuel Braithwaite tells Atticus about this picture, and it's basically very biblical, where Adam ends up naming every animal that God created. And yeah, Adam ended up putting everything in its place, but that didn't work out when Eve entered the picture, and then that entire devil story. And yeah, basically what Samuel wants is that he wants everything to go back how it was. He wants to go back to Eden, and he tells Claire to, and Atticus is like, "I want to know where my father is," and Samuel tells Claire to bring Atticus back to his room. And Claire is like, "You know what, Atticus?" As she's walking Atticus back to his room, she tells Atticus that he needs to start making friends. Not every white person is out to get him. And Atticus is like, "I would trust you, Claire, but I would like to see you being my friend. I just can't take your word for it." And he tells Claire that in order for him to trust Claire, he would like the spell to be lifted from Uncle George and Letty. And Claire does that, and we end up hearing screams from Uncle George and Letty because they start remembering what had happened to them. And Atticus tries to go and save them, but yeah, there's a blockage on the door. He can't exit his room. And a little boy comes in and he's like, "Miss Braithwaite, it's time." So Claire runs away, and apparently a cow is giving birth, and it turns out that instead of a calf, we get a little baby shoggoth. And it was a very, very weird scene, and Claire ends up cuddling the shoggoth as if it's like a little puppy. Letty is trying to get out of her room. She's trying to unlock the door, and she hears someone coming in. She hides, and she has a knife with her, and she ends up attacking the intruder. But it turns out that it's Atticus, and Letty is like, "Atticus, I remember everything. We need to get out of here. Please hurry." And Atticus tells Letty that she needs to calm down, and that he's with her, and that they'll figure out how to escape this place. And yeah, Letty ends up telling Atticus about what her mother put her through. Apparently, her mother would go out every night, and she would say that she is going to church, but she doesn't go to church. She basically hooks up with other men while leaving Letty alone in the house. And Letty is like, "Yeah, one day my mother didn't come back for a week, and I felt very scared. And Atticus is like, Letty, I won't leave you alone, I won't abandon you, and they start making out. And I'm like, would Letty really make out with Atticus? But yeah, the entire scene ended up being very suspicious to me, especially because we find out that the real Atticus is still in his room. He's using Morse code to communicate with his uncle, and he's telling uncle that the Braithwaites are actually wizards. And then he hears someone coming into his room, and it's basically Jamie Chung. We still don't know what kind of character Jamie Chung is playing, but she ends up attacking Atticus, and Atticus and Jamie Chung's character fight. While that's happening, Uncle George ends up seeing Dora, who is Atticus's mother. So it turns out that Atticus says Uncle George was in love with Dora, and Dora is like, we can be together. But this is where Uncle George figures out that no, this is a lie, and Dora isn't real. So he backs away from her. And Letty also backs away from Atticus, from the fake Atticus, because when he unzips his pants, his down there is actually a snake, which relates to the picture that Letty has in her room. And yeah, Atticus also ends up killing Jamie Chung's character, and we see that the members of the Order of the Dawn, or the Order of the Dawn, or whatever that group is called, they are watching these three go through such traumatic experiences as if it's a TV show, which basically it is, because we are watching it too. And Claire's walking around the room, noticing what they're doing. Then they hear the alarm again, and they come out, and yeah, Letty's scared, Atticus is scared, and Uncle George is scared as well. And this is where Uncle George gives them a speech about not being scared, and how they need to stick together, and how they need to be true to themselves, and that he has a plan to get them out of here. William comes in, and he invites Atticus and Uncle George to come to dinner. So we see a whole lot of white people, and they call themselves the Sons of Adam, and Uncle George stands up, and this is where we find out that Atticus is actually related to Titus Braithwaite, and the sons of Titus Braithwaite are automatically members of the Order. And yeah, this is another scene that I really like, because Atticus stands up and he orders everyone to get out of the room except for Samuel, and the rest of the members have to listen to him. However, and then Atticus is like, Samuel, I need you to tell me where my father is. And Samuel is like, Atticus, I get that you have a birthright, but I'm not going to listen to your orders. I am going to use you for my own plans, and just be ready for that. And also, don't mistake being useful to being indispensable, because if you do something, I might end up killing you. Uncle George and Atticus break into the stone tower. However, the woman who's in charge of the stone tower comes in with the gun, and she's like, yeah, I warned you. I said that you were more like animals, and now I have to put you down. But Letty comes in, and she hits the woman in the head. And this is where they figure out that yes, Atticus's father was in the stone tower, because they find his drinking flask. And Uncle George figures out that Atticus' father actually dug his way through, because Atticus's father's favorite book was The Count of Monte Cristo. So we end up finding Atticus's father, and he is actually angry that Atticus came all the way here searching for him. And Atticus is like, but you're the one who wrote the letter. And his father is like, but yeah, under duress, I didn't thought that you were going to come searching for me, but what did you do? So all four of them are driving in the car, and they talk about how the Braithwaites are obsessed with the Book of Names and trying to find the secret to immortality and all of that stuff. And while they're talking, this is where the car crashes into an invisible barrier. It's the same barrier that Claire used to kill all of those KKK members. And yeah, everyone isn't okay. The four of them get out, and as Letty comes out of the car, Samuel ends up shooting Letty, and I was like, oh, wait, is Letty dead? But we saw her end up doing a whole lot of stuff in the trailer, so Letty isn't dead, right? But yeah, she ends up dying, and Samuel is like, Atticus, I'm going to give you a choice. Who ends up surviving? Do you want me to shoot your father, or do you want me to shoot your uncle? And it turns out that Samuel ends up shooting his uncle, and yeah, Uncle George is dead as well. So Atticus is being cleaned up by these women who are in white robes, and while he's being cleaned up, Claire comes in, and Claire is like, Atticus, my father is obsessed with opening the door to Eden back when man was immortal, and Titus Braithwaite came very close, and that's why Samuel thinks that if he can use someone who has the blood of Titus Braithwaite, that might give him the one up in order to be successful with the spell. And while she's talking, we see that Letty is alive. So yeah, Claire is like, even though my father has done horrible things, he is a man of his word. So if you go through with this spell, my father will heal your uncle as well. Before Claire leaves the room, she actually shows her disappointment because apparently the women can't have a very high role in the order. It's all about the men. And before leaving, she ends up giving Atticus this ring. And Claire is like, even I couldn't be worthy enough for this ring, but you are. And before leaving, she tells Atticus that keep in mind that your destiny isn't painted by your father or your great grandfather. You can make your own destiny. And then we have the little scene where Letty wakes up, and she's actually very surprised that she healed from the gun wound, and there isn't even a scar. I actually like Journey Smollett's acting in this scene. And while that's happening, Uncle George is having a conversation with his brother, and he wants Uncle George wants Atticus's father to be kinder to Atticus. Apparently, Atticus' father was a very loving child, and he was full of love. But because of their abusive father, Atticus's father ended up ignoring those feelings. And this is also where we find out that Atticus might end up being Uncle George's son because he had an affair with Dora. I guess that's what's being implied. Maybe it was Uncle George, maybe it was someone else. We're not really sure. So it's time for the spell to work, and yeah, Atticus is being used by Samuel, and we have a whole lot of lights and spirits and all of that stuff going on. And the door to Eden is actually opening, but then Atticus notices his ring, and this weird black smoke starts coming out of this ring. And while that's happening, Atticus notices his great ancestor. And yeah, again, as I said, even though this was a very fun episode, I think that the pacing could have been better because the final moments occurred very, very quickly. I'm not really sure if the ring did something to mess up the spell, or if Atticus did something himself, or his ancestor's spirit came back to help him. But whatever it was, the spell doesn't work. And Atticus's body like releases this blast, and it turns everyone into stone or salt, whatever you want to call it, even Samuel. And the ancestor is waiting for Atticus to run, and Atticus follows his ancestor to run out of the mansion while everything is breaking down and the mansion is on fire. And yeah, the mansion is no more. Now again, I wasn't really expecting the script to handle this entire plot line so quickly. If this was any other show, you know that they would have dragged this entire thing for like 4 or 5 episodes. So Atticus survived. It turns out that Letty survived as well, but she's unhappy because, yeah, Uncle George wasn't able to survive because all of the running and all of that stuff made him lose a whole lot of blood, and he's dead. But I actually went to IMDb to check if Courtney B. Vance is still going to be part of this series. Apparently, he's credited for at least 8 episodes, so maybe he'll return. Who knows? Also, for those wondering why this episode was called Whitey's on the Moon, during the spell session, we had this entire song, Whitey's on the Moon by Gil Scott Heron, being sung. And yeah, this show has been doing an amazing thing with the soundtrack selection and how it relates to what's happening in the narrative. I'm really enjoying that. Whitey's in the Moon is basically about how white people continue being successful while other races, especially the black race, is being discriminated against. It's basically a spoken poem which you can check out in Wikipedia and what it stands for. Anyway, one of our writers will be doing a written review of this for the Geekiary. The link to that will be down in the comment section below as soon as the review goes up. Let me know what you thought of this episode. It was fun. Again, I wasn't expecting the mansion stuff to be over with in just 2 episodes. I think Claire and William are still alive, so they might come after Atticus. And also, Uncle George did say that they also have different mansions across different land. So yeah, we might end up seeing this cult again. Let me know what you thought, and until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later.